Hey everyone, let me introduce you to my life, a never ending cycle of playing second fiddle to my younger brother, Jason. I'm Noah, 24 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my family has treated me like an afterthought. Jason, 21, is the star, the golden child, the one who can do no wrong. Meanwhile, I've had to fight for even the slightest recognition. I know what you're thinking, maybe I'm exaggerating. Oh, I wish. Let me paint you a picture. The moment I turned 18, my parents started charging me $400 a month to live in the same room I grew up in. A room, by the way, that still had the same wallpaper from when I was 12. Meanwhile, Jason, he lived at home rent-free, eating food I helped pay for, using utilities I covered, and generally acting like he owned the place. And when I dared to question this blatant favoritism, I got hit with the classic, our house, our rules. It wasn't just about money either. When I was in high school, I had to maintain a 3.8 GPA while working weekends at a local hardware store. No parties, no distractions, just studying and work. Jason barely scraped by with a 2.4 GPA, never worked a day in his life, and still got to party every weekend because, according to my parents, he needs to enjoy his youth. Every accomplishment of mine got a half-hearted good job, while Jason got a standing ovation for the bare minimum. Still, I tried to be responsible. I worked hard, went to college, graduated with honors, and landed a job 2 weeks after graduation. My reward? A text message that said, "Congrats, son, we're proud of you," and a $50 Applebee's gift card. That was it. No party, no dinner, not even a heartfelt hug. Jason, on the other hand, barely made it through college, switched majors 3 times, failed multiple courses, and somehow still took 6 years to graduate. And for that incredible display of perseverance, my parents bought him a brand new Tesla Model 3 Performance. Not just any Tesla, the top-of-the-line $60,000 version. The day they gave it to him is burned into my memory. We were all standing outside when my dad handed him a small box. Inside were the keys to his brand new ride. Jason lost his mind, jumping up and down like he'd won the lottery. My mom took about 500 pictures for Facebook while my dad turned to me and said, "Don't be jealous. Your brother worked hard for this." Worked hard at what? Beer pong, waking up past noon? When I pointed out that I had graduated with honors while working part-time and received nothing, my mom had the audacity to say, "College was easier for you, Noah?" Jason struggled. Yeah. He struggled to roll out of bed and keep track of the 5 girls he was dating at the same time. From that moment on, Jason's entire personality revolved around that Tesla. Every Instagram story featured his car. Every conversation included, "my Tesla this and my Tesla that." He'd come home at 2 a.m., flooring the accelerator just to hear that stupid electric whirring noise. He treated public streets like a personal racetrack, speeding, swerving, and filming ridiculous TikTok videos while the car was in autopilot mode. I tried to warn him. I told him that driving like a lunatic would eventually catch up with him. My parents told me to stop being negative. Jason called me a buzzkill. I even caught him driving drunk more times than I could count. I offered to be his designated driver, even suggested calling him an Uber, but nope. The car practically drives itself, bro. Then it happened. One Thursday night, I was in my room finishing up work when I heard my parents' bedroom door slam open. Whispered voices filled the hallway, followed by my dad's car screeching out of the driveway. Something was wrong. I found my mom downstairs looking pale. "What's going on?" I asked. She hesitated before mumbling, "Your brother had a little accident with the Tesla." A little accident? That was code for a disaster they were already scrambling to cover up. At around 4:30 a.m., I heard my dad's car pull up. Peeking through the window, I saw him practically dragging Jason up the walkway. He was a mess, missing a shoe, wobbling like a toddler, and sporting a nasty cut on his forehead. Then I heard Jason slur. "The tree came out of nowhere, man." Turns out my dear brother had gotten wasted at some dive bar, decided he was invincible, and wrapped his precious Tesla around a massive oak tree. And my parents? They had rushed to the scene before the police could arrive. By morning, I got the full story. Jason had been at the Rusty Nail, downing shots with his equally brilliant friends. One of them even filmed him toasting to seeing what this baby can really do. On the way home, he took a corner too fast, jumped a curb, and plowed straight into someone's yard. My dad got there first and, somehow, managed to convince the homeowners not to call the cops. No idea what he promised them, but knowing him, it wasn't cheap. The Tesla? Completely totaled. Front end smashed. Windshield cracked. Airbags deployed. It sat in our garage, a $60,000 wreck, like a giant metal middle finger. My parents kept the garage door shut like that would somehow erase the problem. 2 days later, they called a family meeting. And I already knew it wasn't going to be good news. Family meetings are never a good sign. Nobody ever calls one to announce a surprise vacation or that they finally acknowledge their unfair treatment. No, family meetings in my house always mean one thing: I'm about to be volunteered for something. I never agreed to. I walked into the living room, already dreading whatever was coming. My parents were on the couch, wearing their serious discussion faces, the ones they put on when they were about to drop some insane request and pretend it was reasonable. Jason was slouched in an armchair, scrolling through his phone like this whole thing was wasting his precious time. He barely looked up when I entered. My dad cleared his throat. "Noah, sit down. We need to talk." I didn't sit. Let me guess. You want me to help pay for Jason's Tesla? My mom sighed dramatically, like I was the unreasonable one. "Noah, we are a family. When something happens to one of us, we all step up." "Step up?" I repeated. "You mean like how Jason stepped up to pay my rent? Or helped me with school expenses? Or literally contributed to anything in this house?" My dad's jaw tightened. "This isn't the time for that." "No, it never is it?" I crossed my arms. "So, how much do you expect me to step up for?" My mom shifted uncomfortably. "Well, the insurance won't cover it because he was drunk," I finished for her. Her lips pressed together in annoyance. "We don't need to focus on that. What matters is that repairs are going to cost around $18,000. I let out a short laugh. And, my dad continued, like he was negotiating world peace. "We think it's fair that we all contribute." "We all?" I repeated. "So what's Jason putting in?" Jason finally looked up from his phone. "I have, like, $500. Wow, I deadpanned. So generous." My dad pressed on. "Your mother and I can put in $3,000 from our emergency fund." I did the math in my head. "So you want me to cover the other $14,500? Dad gave me a serious nod. "We'll work out a payment plan." "Maybe $1,000 a month until it's covered." Jason, who had just totaled a $60,000 scar because he was too reckless to call an Uber, added, "It's not like you need a fancy apartment anyway. You're always working." I stared at him. At the sheer audacity. He crashes a car, expects me to pay for it, and now he's giving me financial advice? That's when I lost it. I laughed, but not the kind of laugh that comes from something being funny. It was the kind of laugh that comes when you realize just how insane everything around you is. "I'm not giving you a single cent," I said, my voice calm but final. My parents looked at me like I had just suggested we throw Jason in the ocean and see if he floats. "After everything we've done for you," my mom started, her voice trembling in that manipulative way she'd perfected over the years. "What exactly have you done for me?" I cut in. "Made me pay rent while Jason lived here for free? Bought him a brand new Tesla while I drove a car older than him? Constantly ignored everything I accomplished because you were too busy celebrating his ability to exist?" My dad's face turned red. "You will contribute." "No, I won't." The shock on their faces was almost comical. They weren't used to this. They were used to me being the responsible one, the one who sacrificed for the family. But I was done playing that role. Jason, ever the narcissist, scoffed. "So what? You just expect me to suffer?" "Suffer?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean suffer the consequences of your own actions?" "Yes." Jason rolled his eyes, muttering something under his breath, and went back to scrolling through his phone. My parents weren't ready to let it go, though. For the next few days, they barely spoke to me, except to bring up the Tesla again. Every conversation was a variation of, "Have you reconsidered?" "No, he's your brother." "I don't care." My mom went full passive-aggressive, making comments like, "Some people just don't understand family loyalty," while I was sitting 3 feet away. But the worst part? The whispering. I caught them huddled around the kitchen table, talking in hushed tones, stopping whenever I entered the room. My dad spent a lot of time on the phone with the insurance company, using his professional voice. I overheard phrases like comprehensive coverage and vandalism claim. Vandalism? That's when I knew something shady was happening. Then, early Saturday morning, I was jolted awake by a loud bang. At first, I thought it was someone knocking over a trash can outside. I looked out the window, but nothing seemed out of place. I figured it was nothing and went back to sleep. An hour later, I woke up to shouting. I threw on some sweats and ran downstairs to find my parents and Jason in the garage. And there it was. The Tesla, which had already been wrecked, was now completely destroyed. Windshield shattered. All the windows broken. Deep dents covered the doors and hood. The side mirrors were hanging by wires, and one of the headlights was gone. It looked like someone had gone to town on it with a baseball bat. What the hell happened? I asked. Jason turned, eyes full of fury. Like you don't know. I blinked. What? My dad held up something, my old baseball bat, the one I kept in the back of my closet. Then why was this in the bushes outside? My dad asked. It took me a second to process what was happening. Jason had done this. He had taken my bat and trashed his own car, more probably because insurance wouldn't cover the drunk driving accident. But vandalism? That might work. And to top it off, he was framing me. You're seriously trying to pin this on me? I asked, staring straight at Jason. His smirk told me everything I needed to know. Who do you think they'll believe? He said smugly. The responsible one with a stable job or the jealous older brother who refused to help? My parents stood behind him, arms crossed. They had already chosen their side. They always did. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. So let me get this straight. You want me to either pay $14,500 or take the blame for something I didn't do? My dad's voice was deadly serious. We know you did this, Noah. I let out a breath. Okay. My mom's face lit up, thinking I was giving in. Okay, she repeated. I nodded. Okay. But I'm calling the insurance company myself. And the police. The color drained from her face. You wouldn't, Jason hissed. I pulled out my phone. Watch me. For the first time, Jason actually looked nervous. Because this time, he had messed with the wrong person. The second I pulled out my phone, the energy in the room shifted. My parents went from smug confidence to barely concealed panic, while Jason's usual smirk faltered. You wouldn't, he repeated, voice tight. I held his gaze. Watch me. My mom took a sharp breath. Noah, put the phone down. I ignored her and dialed. State Farm Insurance. How can I help you? My dad lunged forward, grabbing my wrist. Noah, don't do this. I yanked my arm free. Why not? If you're so sure I did this, wouldn't you want me to call? Silence. My mom opened her mouth, but no words came out. Jason just stood there, jaw clenched. That was all the proof I needed. They knew I hadn't done it. I stepped out of the garage, pressing the phone to my ear. Hi, yeah, I'm calling about a vandalism claim on a Tesla Model 3 Performance. My parents reported it, but there's something you need to know. I walked into the backyard, away from their frantic whispers, and laid it all out. My brother wrecked the car a few days ago in a drunk driving accident. The front end damage was from that crash. But now, suddenly, the whole car's destroyed, and they're trying to say I did it. The woman on the other end, whose name was Melanie, went quiet for a moment. Then she said, That's a serious accusation. I know, I said. And I have proof I wasn't anywhere near that car when this so-called vandalism happened. I told her everything the suspicious way my parents had been whispering, my dad's desperate phone calls to insurance, how they tried to guilt me into paying for Jason's mistake, and most importantly, how I'd been asleep when the second round of damage occurred. I just want to make sure you guys don't get scammed, I added, because I guarantee they're hoping this payout covers a new car for him. Melanie's voice was clipped and professional. We'll be sending an investigator first thing Monday morning, and if what you're saying is true, they won't like the results. I thanked her and hung up. When I turned around, my parents were standing in the doorway, watching me like I'd just set the house on fire. What the hell did you just do? My dad demanded. I slipped my phone into my pocket. Made sure the truth comes out, Jason scoffed. You're such a bitter, jealous loser. You just couldn't let it go. Let what go? I shot back. The fact that you're an entitled idiot who thinks he can do whatever he wants? The fact that you tried to frame me for felony insurance fraud? Jason rolled his eyes. Whatever. They'll believe me over you, I smirked. We'll see. Monday morning came fast. I got up early and waited in the kitchen, drinking coffee while my parents whispered frantically in the other room. Jason was pretending to be unbothered, but his leg bounced under the table. At exactly 9:00 a.m., the investigator arrived. His name was Mac. Older guy, mid-40s, wearing a wrinkled button-down and khakis. He carried a tablet and a camera, looking like he'd seen every scam in the book. My dad, ever the wannabe businessman, put on his best reasonable adult voice and led him straight to the garage. Max spent about 20 minutes walking around the Tesla, taking photos from every angle. His expression never changed, but I could tell he saw what I saw, two very different types of damage. Finally, he turned to Jason. Can you tell me exactly when you discovered the vandalism? Jason put on his best innocent act. Saturday morning. I came outside and it was just like this. Mac nodded, making notes. And you're sure you didn't hear anything unusual that night? Jason shook his head. Nope. I was asleep. I almost laughed. He had no idea what was coming. Mac turned to me. And you, Noah? Can you confirm your whereabouts that night? I nodded. Yeah, I was home, asleep in my room. Anyone who can verify that? I was playing Xbox with friends until about 11:00 p.m. They can confirm I was online. And I also ordered a pizza around 9:30. The delivery receipt should show I was here. Mac made more notes. My dad shifted uncomfortably. Then Mac asked the million-dollar question. Do any of your neighbors have security cameras? That's when I knew Jason was screwed. Turns out, our next-door neighbors had recently installed a wide-angle security camera. And guess what? It had a perfect view of our driveway. Mac got permission to review the footage. 30 minutes later, he came back inside, his face unreadable. He set his tablet on the table and pressed play. And there it was. At 2:13 a.m., Saturday morning, Jason, clear as day, was seen sneaking into the garage, grabbing my baseball bat from my car, and absolutely obliterating his already wrecked Tesla. Window by window, mirror by mirror. Every dent, every smash. And then, the cherry on top, him tossing the bat into the bushes, glancing around, and casually walking back inside like nothing happened. Silence filled the room. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. My dad went pale. Jason? He was frozen. Mac let the video play in full. When it ended, he looked up. So? Anything to say? Jason's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Mac turned to my parents. Since the claim was filed under your name, Mr. and Miss S. Carter, you understand that attempting to defraud an insurance company is a felony, correct? My dad's voice cracked. This is a misunderstanding. Really? Mac said, unimpressed. Because this looks exactly like insurance fraud. Jason finally snapped out of his shock. It wasn't like that, he blurted. Mac didn't care. We'll be forwarding this to our fraud department and notifying the authorities. That's when my mom turned to me, desperate. Noah, please. I held up a hand. Nope. Jason jumped to his feet. You ruined my life. I let out a short laugh. No, you did that. Mac left after giving my parents the paperwork and the house imploded. My dad yelled about how Jason had humiliated the family. My mom cried. Jason ranted about how none of this was his fault. And me? I just sat back and watched. Then my dad turned to me. You need to help us fix this. I shook my head. I don't need to do anything. Then I stood up, grabbed my car keys, and walked out. As I drove away, my phone buzzed. A text from my best friend, Chris. Chris, hey man, need a place to crash? I smiled. It was time to finally leave. I didn't look back as I pulled out of the driveway. The sound of my mom's muffled sobs faded as I turned the corner, and with every mile I put between myself and that house, my chest felt a little lighter. Chris was waiting for me when I pulled into his driveway. He leaned against his porch, arms crossed, a knowing smirk on his face. Dude, he said as I stepped out of the car. I don't know what the hell happened, but judging by that text you sent me, it's bad. I let out a slow breath. Worse than bad. Worse than when Jason threw up in your laptop freshman year. I snorted. Way worse. Chris clapped a hand on my shoulder. Then come inside, man. We got beer, pizza, and a couch with your name on it. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I spent the next few days at Chris's place, trying to wrap my head around everything. My phone was a war zone: calls, texts, voicemails, all from my parents. At first, they were furious, demanding I fix the mess I made. Then came the guilt trips. Mom, Noah, please, we're family. We can get through this if you just come home. Dad, you've embarrassed this family enough. Do the right thing before it's too late. Jason, unsurprisingly, wasn't begging for my help. His messages were just straight-up rage. Jason, you ruined my life. You jealous piece of shit. Hope you're happy? I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I focused on getting my own life together. Chris helped me find a cheap one-bedroom apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I moved in within a week, using the money I had saved, the same money they had tried to take from me. And while I was setting up my new place, my family was falling apart. Turns out, the insurance fraud department didn't waste any time. A week after the investigator exposed Jason's scam, the police got involved. Since my parents were the ones who had filed the false claim, they were pulled into the mess, too. Jason was charged with attempted insurance fraud and filing a false police report. And because the original DUI crash had been swept under the rug, the cops decided to dig deeper. That's when they found out just how badly my parents had covered for him. Apparently, the homeowners whose tree Jason had destroyed weren't thrilled about being bribed into silence. Once they found out about the fraud case, they gave a full statement to the police. My dad had written them a fat check that night, promising it would all go away. That little fact turned into an obstruction of justice charge. In the span of 2 weeks, Jason went from golden child to criminal defendant. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. One evening, while I was enjoying my new piece, Chris walked into the living room and tossed me my phone. "Missed call from your dad," he said. "Third one today." I sighed. "What do they want now?" Chris raised an eyebrow. "You're really gonna make me listen to the voicemail?" I groaned, but played it anyway. My dad's voice came through, tense and forced. "Noah, your mother and I need to talk to you. In person." I was about to delete it, but then he added, "It's important. Just come home. One last time," Chris whistled. "Sounds serious." I rolled my eyes. It's always serious with them. Still, curiosity got the best of me. The next day, I drove back, but this time, I wasn't walking in as the same guy who had left. The house felt different when I stepped inside, colder, emptier. The tension was suffocating. My mom sat on the couch, clutching a tissue, like it was the only thing keeping her together. My dad stood near the fireplace, arms crossed. Jason, for once, wasn't looking smug. He looked exhausted. I didn't sit. "What do you want?" I asked. My dad cleared his throat. "We need your help." I huffed a laugh. Shocker. "This isn't a joke, Noah," my mom said. "We're selling the house." I blinked. "What?" Dad ran a hand down his face. "After everything that's happened, we're out of options. The legal fees, the fines, Jason's mess, it's too much. We can't afford to stay here." I crossed my arms. "And what does this have to do with me?" My mom gave me a watery smile. "We were hoping you could help us financially, just until we get back on our feet." I stared at them. They really had the audacity to ask for my money after everything they had done. Jason finally spoke up, his voice bitter. "Come on, Noah. You got your own place now. You've got savings. You can afford it." And there it was. The same entitlement. The same expectation that I'd clean up his mess. I took a slow breath. "Let me get this straight. You covered for Jason his whole life, let him get away with everything, framed me for a crime. I didn't commit, and now that everything's falling apart, you want my help?" Dad's jaw tightened. "We're family, no." I shook my head. "We're not." My mom's face crumpled. "Noah, please." I took a step back. I spent years being the backup plan. The second choice. The scapegoat. "I'm done." Jason scoffed. "So that's it? You're just gonna let us lose everything?" I met his gaze. "You already lost everything. You just didn't realize it until now." And with that, I turned and walked out. That was the last time I spoke to them. A month later, the house sold. My parents moved into a tiny apartment. Jason, now without a car, without a job, and with a criminal record, had to take the bus. Me? I thrived. Without their constant guilt trips and demands, I focused on my life. I got promoted at work. Started taking MBA night classes. For the first time in forever, I was living for me. One night, while sitting on my apartment balcony, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? A familiar voice, quieter now. Noah, it's Mom, I sighed. What do you want? A pause. Then, softly, we miss you. I closed my eyes, letting the words settle. Then, just as softly, I said, I don't miss you, and hung up. For the first time, I truly felt free. Hanging up on my mom should have felt heavier. I expected guilt, second thoughts, something. Instead, all I felt was relief. The past few months had been a crash course in freedom. No more forced family meetings. No more guilt trips. No more being the one expected to fix everything. My apartment wasn't much, just a small one-bedroom with secondhand furniture, but it was mine. Every time I unlocked the door, I was reminded that I had built this life on my own. And unlike my parents, I wasn't about to screw it up. One thing I had learned about my brother, he didn't know how to function without someone cleaning up after him. After my parents sold the house, their financial situation went from bad to worse. Between the insurance fraud fines, Jason's legal fees, and the fact that my dad lost his job after the scandal, they had burned through their savings fast. My mom picked up part-time work at a local bakery, and my dad, for the first time in his life, had to take a job at a hardware store, the same kind of place they used to mock me for working at when I was a teenager. Jason, though, he was floundering. With no car, no job, and no one left to make excuses for him, reality hit hard. He applied for a few gigs, but quickly realized no one wanted to hire someone with a fraud conviction. Employers tend to frown on things like lying to insurance companies. I had no sympathy. The last time I ran into him was purely by accident. I was grabbing coffee near my office when I heard an obnoxious voice behind me. Bro, just spot me this one time. I swear I'll get you back. I turned, and there he was, Jason, standing outside the cafe, arguing with some old friend from college. He looked rough. His usual cocky swagger was gone, replaced with slouched shoulders and desperation in his eyes. He was thinner, his expensive clothes replaced by whatever he could still afford. His friends sighed. Dude, we all helped you out when this crap went down. You still owe me from last time. Jason scoffed. Wow. So much for loyalty. His friend laughed bitterly. Loyalty? You burned every bridge you had. Nobody wants to bail you out anymore. Jason's jaw tightened. Whatever. I don't need your help anyway. He turned to leave and finally noticed me. For a second, his eyes widened, then he scowled. What the hell are you looking at? I took a slow sip of my coffee. Just a guy reaping what he sowed. Jason bristled. Go to hell, I smirked. You first. I walked past him, leaving him exactly where he belonged alone. After that, I figured my parents would get the hint. I had made it clear I wanted nothing to do with them. But if there was one thing I had learned, it was that desperation makes people bold. One evening, after a long day at work, I came home to find something unexpected: my parents standing outside my apartment building. I sighed before I even got out of my car. They looked different, smaller somehow. My dad, once so full of authority, seemed tired. My mom clutched her purse like it was the only thing grounding her. I considered driving away, but then my mom spotted me. Noah! Too late. I got out, keeping my distance. What are you doing here? My dad cleared his throat. We need to talk. I shook my head. No, you need something. You always need something. Mom stepped forward. It's Jason. I blinked. What about him? She sighed, her voice barely above a whisper. He's not doing well. I raised an eyebrow. That's not my problem. Dad frowned. He's still your brother. I laughed, sharp and humorless. Now he is? Funny, because when he was trying to frame me for felony fraud, I don't remember you calling him my brother then. Mom flinched. Noah, please. He's at rock bottom. Yeah? So? I crossed my arms. You chose this. You chose to shield him, to let him get away with everything. And now that he's paying the price, you want me to swoop in and fix it? Dad exhaled heavily. He's in trouble. I frowned. What kind of trouble? They hesitated. Then my mom admitted he got involved with the wrong people. That made me pause. Define wrong people. She glanced at my dad, then back at me. He borrowed money. A lot of it. I sighed. And let me guess, you want me to cover it? Dad, ever the master manipulator, played his final card. Noah, if he doesn't pay them back, they'll come after him. I stared at them. You mean to tell me that Jason, who has never faced real consequences in his life, somehow managed to piss off people who actually enforce consequences? Mom's eyes welled up. He could get hurt. I exhaled slowly, looking at the two people who had spent my entire life making me feel like I didn't matter. And now they were here expecting me to save them. I looked at my mom, then at my dad, and finally at the building behind me, the place I had built without their help. Then I said the only thing I knew was right. That's not my problem. Mom gasped. Noah! Dad took a step forward, voice low. You would really let your own brother suffer? I tilted my head. You mean like how you let me suffer? Like how you made me pay rent while he lived free? Like how you tried to steal my savings? Like how you framed me for a felony? Silence. Then I smiled. Jason finally found a situation he can't manipulate his way out of? Good. Maybe he'll finally learn something. My mom started crying. Noah, please. I didn't budge. You made your choices. Jason made his. Now, you all get to live with them. I turned and walked into my building. I didn't check to see if they stayed. I didn't care. That was the last time I saw them. Jason didn't magically get saved. He didn't win the lottery or find some miraculous way out of his mess. From what I heard, he had to sell everything he had left to pay off his debts. My parents? They faded into the background, too ashamed to show their faces. And me? I thrived. I finished my MBA, got promoted, traveled, and best of all, I never once looked back. Sometimes people say, family is forever. But here's what I learned. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up for you, who treats you with respect, who stands by you when it matters. And my family? They were just strangers I used to know. It's been 2 years since I walked away from my family for good. 2 years since I let go of the guilt, the manipulation, the endless cycle of being the one who had to clean up their mess. And in those 2 years, I've built a life that's actually mine. At first, there were moments of doubt, not because I missed them, but because I had spent my entire life being conditioned to fix things. It felt strange not having their problems hanging over me like a dark cloud. No more family emergencies draining my savings. No more last-minute guilt trips. No more Jason screwing up and expecting me to take the hit. But every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself of why I walked away. I wasn't abandoning them. I was choosing myself. And that choice? Best decision I ever made. Without their drama weighing me down, I thrived. I finished my MBA and got a major promotion at work. I traveled for the first time in my life, went to Europe, hiked in the Rockies, even spent a week on a beach where no one knew my name. I made new friends, real ones, the kind who actually cared about me and didn't just see me as a backup plan. Chris, of course, stuck around. He made sure of it. You finally living like a free man? He joked one night over beers. I grinned. Best damn feeling in the world. And it was. I never reached out to Jason. Didn't need to. His downfall played out just like I knew it would. After burning every bridge he had, he bounced from one failed scheme to another, always looking for the easy way out. Last I heard, he was still stuck in our hometown, living in a tiny apartment with 2 random guys who were just as lost as he was. He still didn't have a car, couldn't hold down a job for more than a few months, and the best part? No one was left to bail him out. I used to think he'd change if he ever faced real consequences, but some people don't want to change. They just want someone else to suffer for their mistakes. Too bad for him. I wasn't playing that role anymore. One night, I was sitting on my balcony, watching the city lights, when my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I debated ignoring it, but opened the message anyway. Jason? Hey, Noah. It's been a while. I know I messed up. A lot. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I don't know, man. Things aren't great. I miss having a brother. I stared at the screen, feeling nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just indifference. The thing is, Jason didn't miss me. He missed what I used to do for him. He missed having a safety net. I deleted the message without responding, because for the first time in my life, I owed him nothing. People like to say, family is forever. But I've learned that's not true. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up for you, who respects you, who treats you like you matter. And my parents? Jason? They never did. So I moved on. I built a new life, a real family, a future where I wasn't just the guy who got stepped on. And looking back, I wouldn't change a damn thing. Story 2. Before breaking up with me, my boyfriend publicly humiliated me on TikTok by labeling me the most ugly person he had ever dated. I thus vanished silently this morning. He was crying on his knees as I answered my door after ignoring 37 missed calls. I've been dating Derek for almost 3 years now. I was 21 when I first met him. When the garbage disposal jammed, he was the one who knew how to fix it. The first green flag, I supposed. After exchanging Instagrams and exchanging texts, the rest just sort of fell into place. The last 3 years have been mostly positive. We established a routine, which included watching documentaries on Netflix on Thursdays and having dinner at his mom's every other Sunday. In the summer, he goes camping with his pals. He genuinely listened when I talked about my day and always remembered my birthday. That's nearly unicorn behavior these days. As an aside, my previous partner believed that emotional labor was a form of delivery. Admittedly, my bar was on the ground. Let's fast forward to this Tuesday. During lunch, I'm browsing through my phone when my buddy Tamara sends me a text. The TikTok link simply says, "Call me now" in all uppercase. She once texted, but Amara isn't the dramatic kind. There was a small problem when her flat practically flooded. Derek is there when I click the link. On Mondays, his friends always congregate in the dive pub where he has throwbacks. The neon Budweiser sign behind him, which changes every 7 seconds, told me. While we waited for our order, we counted once. He is visibly intoxicated, with a bright red complexion and an arm wrapped around his pal Xavier. Off camera, someone asks, "Rate your girlfriend, bro." "And you everyone." His expression changed. His smile wasn't his usual one. I had never seen this strange grin before, as if he were going to share some secret joke with the world. Eliana. To be honest, she's perhaps the most repulsive lady I've ever dated. Similar to a 4. On a favorable day, someone shouts savage as the bar explodes inside of us. She makes delicious enchiladas and never complains when I go out with the lads, so I keep her around even if Derek simply laughs and moves on. You know, little maintenance. Then he is asked if he is concerned. I'll watch the video. His answer? She has no idea what TikTok is anymore. In addition, consider updating shortly. Too much stuff. According to the timestamp, it was posted at 11:43 p.m. I texted him good night on Monday night when I was at home doing a stinking clay mask. 17,000 people saw the video, 17%. I just stared at my phone when I sat in the break room. Didn't yell or weep. I just noticed a strange chill creeping up my chest. 3 years of dating, and this is his true opinion of me. He had been at my house the previous evening. Together, we had prepared dinner. We discussed the possibility of moving in when my lease expires in August. He had whispered, "I love you, babe," and given me a farewell kiss, as if it didn't exist. And it seems that I was the repulsive girlfriend he intended to break up with 12 hours later. I responded to Amara's SMS visiting after work. Keep it a secret. After that, I put my phone in my backpack, turned off all alerts, and managed to go through 3 more client visits without losing my mind. Autopilot is strange in that way. I didn't go home after work. I went directly to Target, purchased an inexpensive duffel bag, and packed it with necessities like a phone charger, toothbrush, deodorant, and a few t-shirts. $47. $16 was spent. For whatever reason, I still have the receipt in my wallet. At 6:13 p.m., I drove to a local apartment complex and spent 20 minutes sitting in the parking lot, looking at nothing while replaying the video in my mind. When I was ill with the illness last winter, Derek told me I looked lovely when I dressed up for his company's Christmas party, and I can't stop thinking about that. We went to the beach 3 weeks ago, and I felt really self-conscious about wearing a bikini. All falsehoods or just statements made while in a relationship. When I arrived, Amara didn't ask any questions. "What's the plan?" she said, pointing to her couch and pouring 2 glasses of the cheap rose we drank in college. I made the decision at that point to not give him the satisfaction of having a breakup talk. No sobs, no pleading, no big altercation that he can later tell his brothers about. I'm simply going to vanish. That evening, we worked on creating a checklist. Blocked Eric from everything. Changed my passwords on Twitter, Instagram, and my phone. Most of them he knew. For the remainder of the week, call in from work. Only my mother should know my true whereabouts. Derek first texted 7 times as much as usual by midnight. "What would you want to have for dinner? Are you still planning to see us tonight?" It was by dawn. "You're where?" Furthermore, "Why don't you respond by the afternoon?" He made 12 calls. Not a single reference to the TikTok. No apologies, nothing. I binge-watched all of Love Island while staying at Tamara's on Wednesday and Thursday. When your life is falling apart, trash TV may be surprisingly healing. So that Amara wouldn't hear, I sobbed in the shower. Since none of us felt like cooking, I placed an excessive Uber Eats order. Amara stated Derek had been at my place on Friday morning when she went to get more of my clothes. His jacket was flung across my couch, and there were empty energy drink cans on the counter. He had attached a message on my door. "Give me a call. We must speak. Nothing has been spoken yet regarding why I should speak with you." Simply being unaware of the video. On Thursday night, the TikTok inexplicably vanished from his account. However, it was too late because it had already been screen captured and was circulating around our friends. "Are you okay?" was exploding on my phone. Texts from individuals I haven't spoken to in several months. I spent the whole weekend avoiding calls from unidentified numbers. After realizing I had banned him, Derek started using his friends' phones and jumped whenever someone knocked on a door. I received screenshots of Derek's Instagram stories from Margaret, who was a member of my former community college group chat. Vague posts with depressing music lyrics about missing someone and my worst life mistake. Traditional damage control. Sunday evening, the 2632 calls were missed on Monday morning. On Monday, I returned to work at last. When I walked in, my manager gave me a hug. The footage had apparently reached her FIP as well, advised me to wait for another day if necessary. "No," I said. I needed to go back to normal and stop worrying about the trash fire. My relationship was like that. It was during my lunch break when Derek arrived at the salon. My coworker told him I wasn't there, but I was hiding in the supply closet. His voice reached me. Through the door came that low rumble I knew so well, sounded worn out. Excellent. Exactly 1 week had passed since I'd watched the video by Tuesday morning. There were 37 missed calls. "Please" was all he said in his most recent text. I had to stop by my flat to pick up my mail. A parcel was waiting for a signature. Figured out 8 a.m. Derek often leaves for work around 7:30, so it was safe. I was mistaken. He was seated on my welcome mat when I unlocked my door. The one he handed me states that the Wi-Fi immediately connects to your house. When he heard my key shout, he glanced up. He was a complete mess. Dark rings beneath his eyes hadn't been shaved. Sporting the identical Metallica shirt that he had on in his 2-day-old Instagram story. He really sagged when he saw me. Not in an artificially dramatic manner, like if his body had collapsed on his knees, causing tears to fall out of his eyes instantly. Keep chanting my name. With the key still in my palm, I simply stood there, felt nothing. Then, everything. Then nothing once more. "Please, Eliana, I'm very sorry. Why I said those things is a mystery to me. I was intoxicated. I was under pressure from the guys. None of it was my intention. Just talk to me, please." I interrupted him. "I saw your true opinion of me. There is nothing to discuss." Passed by him as if he were a piece of furniture. I walked back to my car after getting my mail. I was followed to the parking lot by him. Still in tears, still pleading, entered my vehicle. Locked the doors. Drove back to Amara's. He called 5 more times before I even made it across town. So that brings us to now. It's been exactly 8 days, 4 hours and 22 minutes since I saw that video. Since I realize the person I trusted most in the world sees me as a convenient placeholder until something better comes along, I don't know what happens next. Part of me, a small, stupid part, misses him, misses the routine, misses believing I was loved. I keep replaying his words from the video. Hideous upgrade. So casual, so cruel. 3 years of dating. And that's what I'm worth. We'll update when there's more to tell. For now, I'm just taking it one day at a time. First update. YALL remember me? The girl whose boyfriend of 3 years called her hideous on TikTok and then had the audacity to act shocked when she disappeared. Yeah, that's still me, unfortunately. First of all, thank you for all the support on my last post. It's been exactly 17 days since I saw that video, and 9 days since Derek showed up crying on my doorstep. Let me tell you, things have gotten weird. So after I left Derek in the parking lot that morning, Tuesday, 8:43 a.m., according to my car's timestamp, I drove straight back to Amara's apartment in full zombie mode. The whole journey, my phone was lighting up with calls. Derek had evidently moved on to using his mom's phone to reach me, which is a unique type of desperation. When I arrived back to Amara's, I simply sat in her kitchen gazing at the fading Live Laugh tequila magnet on her fridge. I couldn't weep anymore. It felt like my emotions had finally hit their data limit for the month. Amara arrived home from her job about 2 p.m. They found me in the exact same posture, still in my coat. She just sighed, handed me a White Claw from the fridge. Lime, the greater flavor, and stated something that genuinely made me think. She questioned whether I'd been detecting red flags with Derek all along, but had just been filtering them out. At first, I was defensive. Derek and I had a fantastic friendship. He remembers my birthday. He watched The Bachelor with me, even though he disliked it. He never grumbled when my hair clogged the shower drain. I thought he was cleaning it with plenty of space, but the bar is practically in hell these days. Amara then began to pose targeted queries. Have you ever made fun of my appearance, Derek? Well, he responded, there was that time. I looked very broad in my beloved pants, but in a charming way. He also questioned if the hairdresser intended for my highlights to be that brassy when I had them done last summer. Additionally, he had the strange tendency of mentioning celebrities that he thought were beautiful. I always get encouragement for my aspirations from really skinny, makeup-free people who don't look like me. He acknowledged that he was happy of me for getting promoted last year, but he also indicated that I might not be able to handle the stress. He always shifted the conversation to how costly it would be for Derek to have equal expectations for our relationship whenever I said that we could return to school in the future. Considering it? Not at all. If I met him 15 minutes late, he might abruptly cancel arrangements to hang out with the lads, but I'd get a slew of irritated texts, and I was expected to accept it. I felt sick to my stomach by the time we were done wearing our white garments. There was nothing strange or out of character about the TikTok. For the first time, without the veil of wanting to think we were flawless, I realized what had always been there. Derek went to a new level that evening. The doorbell at Amara's rang at precisely 9:17 p.m. Both of us froze as if we had been apprehended by the public doing a crime. I've never seen grocery store flowers so depressing as Derek's. Amara became quite protective. She informed him that I wasn't there and barely opened the door enough to obscure the view inside. He pleaded with her to just give him 5 minutes to speak to me, and I could hear his voice breaking. Claimed to have dropped 7 pounds and to have not slept for days. That he would stop at nothing to make this right. Amara discovered a handwritten message he had tucked under the door when she eventually persuaded him to leave. There are 8 front and back pages. Admittedly, the first read it twice. There was a lot. The paper has tears and stains on it. I swear to make up for this to you for the rest of my life. Explanations of his intoxication and the peer pressure he was receiving from his peers. How his day at work had been going. Traditional deflection. Bingo. But I was moved by one sentence in particular. I'm insecure and worried that you'll realize you're too wonderful for me, which is why I said those awful things. I honestly contemplated phoning him for almost 20 minutes. My brain was that twisted up. I felt sorry for him after he publicly humiliated me. Fortunately, Amara's wifey decided to collapse at that precise moment. We were unable to stream anything on Thursday night due to the traditional Xfinity outage. My first major enlightenment came when we ended up looking through old pictures on my phone instead. In every single photo that Derek and I have taken together over the previous 12 months, he's either staring at his phone, ignoring me, or making some dumb expression while I'm grinning broadly at him. There isn't a single one when he looks at me the same way I do. Why hadn't I seen that earlier? There was a fresh development on Friday morning. When Derek arrived to my flat at 7 a.m., my brother Miguel called to ask if he knew where I was. Derek tells Miguel, the overly protective brother, that they will be talking about something new if he visits again. It's dramatic, but I like the feeling. By that time, Derek's constant attempts to get in touch with me were literally beginning to suffocate me. It was not romantic. It was not comfy. I thus took a step that I had been dreading. I wrote a draft. Easy. Straightforward. No space for misunderstandings. I require room. Please don't get in touch with me. My family and my pals. When will I contact you, whether I'm prepared to speak? At 10:22 a.m., send it. When I checked my phone again, I couldn't bear to see his reaction, so I turned it off for 3 hours right away. 5 paragraphs were waiting for me. The main idea? He got it. He would be considerate of my limits. If it meant waiting forever, he would. 3 more texts inquiring when eternity could end followed right away. And next week, if possible, let's just get coffee. Boundary respect is a waste. In fact, the weekend was quiet. We had the home to ourselves because Amara's roommate, Margaret, was visiting her parents out of town. We placed our order, put on face masks, watched all 3 of the Magic Mike films for the plot. Of course, and I didn't check my phone for a full day. It was like to rising to the surface having submerged. However, everything changed on Sunday night. Before going to bed, I browsed Instagram. I recognize bad habits when I see them. A video had been posted by Derek. Not any old video. An apology to me in public. I was tagged in everything. For 4 minutes and 27 seconds, he sits in his car, his red-rimmed eyes staring straight into the camera, telling everyone who watched that awful TikTok how sorry he was, how much he regrets hurting the most beautiful person he's ever seen on the inside and out, and how he's becoming a better man. The comments were disorganized. While some people applaud him for accepting accountability bars, others criticize him for bringing me down once more. Xavier, his friend, is commenting, "Keep going, dude," as if Derek had been the victim. After that, I was unable to sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about how public even his apology was. Even his alleged low point was meticulously captured on camera, most likely with several takes captured during the best times for interaction. 8 p.m. SUNDAY. I made the decision to return to my own apartment on Monday morning. Although Amara had been wonderful, I couldn't stay hidden at her house indefinitely. In addition, cold showers in February are not cool, and her hot water heater had been acting up all weekend. My phone rang with a Venmo alert as I was assembling my duffel bag. I will never have the anniversary dinner that Derek sent me with the $300 note. Next week would have been our 3rd anniversary. I immediately blocked him on Venmo too after sending it back. Returning to my apartment by car felt like going to a job interview where I knew I would fail. I half expected to see Derek's car pull up behind me, so I kept checking my rearview mirror at every red light. However, when I got there, my apartment building was Derek-free. Mrs. Rogers, my neighbor, gave me a nod in the hallway as if I hadn't been gone for more than 2 weeks. All of my plans had died. Goodbye to my snake plant, which was said to be unkillable. The air smelled stale and slightly like the Indian takeout I'd forgotten in the fridge. It felt both strange and familiar, like putting on jeans that don't quite fit anymore. And then I saw them post-it notes everywhere on my bathroom mirror. "I miss your smile" on my fridge. "Remember our first date here on my TV? Our Netflix queue misses you on my bedside table. I can't sleep without you." I stood there in shock, slowly realizing what had happened. Derek still had the spare key I'd given him last year. He'd been in my apartment while I was gone. My skin instantly crawled. I checked all the closets under the bed behind the shower curtain. Half convinced he might be hiding somewhere, he wasn't. But the violation of my space felt just as creepy. I called my landlord immediately and explained the situation. He agreed to change my locks the next morning. Then I systematically went through my apartment, removing every single post-it note and ripping them into tiny pieces. Petty, maybe. Satisfying, absolutely. That night was my first one, back in my own bed. And I won't lie, it was weird. I kept waking up expecting to feel Derek weight on the mattress. My brain hadn't caught up to the reality that we were over. Tuesday morning. Yesterday, I was making coffee when someone knocked on my door. My heart halted for a second before I recalled Derek key wouldn't work anymore. It wasn't Derek. It was Xavier. Xavier, who had been in the TikTok video laughing a long while. Derek called me ugly. Xavier, who I'd been friends with before I ever knew Derek Xavier, who had reportedly come as Derek's envoy. He seemed uneasy, shuffling from foot to foot in the corridor. Started with small conversation about the weather. Seriously. Before eventually getting to the subject, Derek was in a pretty horrible place and simply wanted 5 minutes to explain himself. I asked Xavier if he recalled laughing in that video. He had the courtesy to appear humiliated, said he was inebriated, and just went along with the guys. Then hit me with this gem. He didn't mean any of it. Eliana, guys talk like that when they're together, you know. Whether intoxicated or sober, I don't want to be with someone who talks like that with his pals. When I'm not around, I don't want to wonder what he says about me. Someone who need a public breakdown and a friendship intervention to acknowledge his feelings for me is not someone I want to be with. Thank you for stopping by, Xavier. I closed the door and wished Derek a speedy recovery. I went through my phone last night and unfollowed Derek on all of the platforms. We were still in contact. Removed the pictures of us from the walls of my apartment. Packed up the Xbox controller he used when he visited and placed them in a box in my closet. He also left the sweatshirt at home. I don't want to see them, but I'm also not ready to return them yet. I then placed an order for dinner there. I secretly adored eating it while watching The Last of Us, which Derek refused to watch since he dislikes zombie programs, but he constantly claimed that it was too hot. I had been putting off using the expensive bath bomb my mother purchased me for Christmas until a special occasion. At around midnight, a text message from an unfamiliar number appeared on my phone. Derek is here. Don't block this number, please. I just have one thing to know. Did you find any significance in those 3 years? Since they meant the world to me. I spent a long time staring at those words. 3 years. 3 years of sluggish Sunday mornings, holiday feasts, and inside jokes. I spent 3 years creating a life I believed we would have together forever, and 3 years of little jabs disguised as jokes. Walking on eggshells around his emotions for 3 years. I've spent 3 years shrinking to fit in with him. I didn't respond. I just shut off my phone and put the number to my blacklisted list. I got up this morning and accomplished something that I hadn't done in 2.5 weeks. For myself, I devised a strategy. Not a covert tactic, not a response to Derek. For me, it was just another typical day. However, I witnessed something that really stopped me in my tracks as I was leaving to get coffee. Derek's Instagram profile image was now a photograph of us from his cousin's wedding last summer. We both smiled as I rested my head on his shoulder. It shouldn't make a difference. I shouldn't be impacted at all. However, it did. When further information becomes available, we'll provide an update. I'm taking it day by day for the time being and keeping in mind my grandmother's advice. Occasionally, the garbage removes itself. Second update, everyone. I didn't want to update so quickly, but I have a lot to analyze from the previous week. I viewed the video precisely 32 days ago. I had to reconstruct my life for a month without the person I believed would be my future. To be honest, there are days that are better than others. Last Saturday, the strangest thing occurred. I was at my emotional support store, Target. Don't pass judgment. I finally made the decision to throw away the gray sheets, so I'm picking up some new ones. Derek's eyes were usually blue when he spoke. Gag! A woman was gazing at me from the other end of the aisle as I was deciding between terracotta and sage green. At first, I thought I could have a piece of toilet paper stuck to my shoe or something on my face. It wouldn't be the initial instance. However, she approached me with a very uneasy expression and inquired whether I was the girl from Derek's TikTok. My tummy began to clench up immediately. Being embarrassed online is one thing, but being recognized by whole strangers is quite another. Wearing yesterday's disheveled hair and no makeup, I was in Target on a random Saturday. She started off with this embarrassing apologies before I could even reply. claiming that she had been among those who had left a hurtful remark on the initial video, but that she felt awful after witnessing Derek's public apology and realizing the wrongness of cyberbullying. Her exact words: "I simply stood with my terracotta sheets in my hands." Panic-driven decision, evidently, during the stranger's character-building moment in the home goods aisle. I was able to thank her when she eventually finished talking. Everything is all right. Even though it was just 62 degrees outside, I had a good conversation and a quick stroll to check that out in my car for 20 minutes thereafter with the air conditioner blaring. It dawned on me then. I've changed from being Ilyana. Some folks think I'm the TikTok chick. I became outraged in a level I had never felt before when I realized that my humiliation had become my identity. I wasn't as furious as I had been for weeks. Pure. Motivating. Do something productive. Furious. I couldn't sleep on Sunday morning, so I prepared a list on my notes app after waking up at 6:13 a.m. Trim my hair. Derek enjoyed it for a long time, but I always wanted to try a lot. Sign up for that kickboxing class Amara keeps mentioning. I've been putting off applying to that certificate program, so finally do it. Give my bedroom a makeover. No more color schemes that are geared at men. By 11 a.m., download the dating app E. Number 1 was already crossed off my list. Entered supercuts without a reservation. Chopping off 7 inches of hair and living recklessly Lola. The stylist repeatedly inquired as to if I was certain I needed more time to consider it. If I had been persuaded to do it, nope, I told her. All it took was a change. She didn't have to be aware. Derek had said something to me throughout the years, and I was naming each snip of the scissors in my mind. Having more pronounced eyebrows enhances your appearance. Take a snip. No man desires a female who consumes more food than he does. Take a snip. Sometimes you laugh too loudly. Take a snip. I hardly recognized myself when she turned me around to view the outcome. It was lighter around my neck. My head was lighter. Hell, I felt lighter all over. After I came home, I uploaded a selfie to Instagram. Just me, with my new hairstyle. The message, new month, new me, with the sunlight streaming in from my kitchen window. Xavier and 2 of Derek's other buddies were among the 87 people who liked it in less than an hour. Maybe it's petty, but I'll accept the little victories. The second item on my list arrived on Monday. I dragged myself at an awful hour to a Martian kickboxing studio. I was sure I would seem foolish. I didn't have time to feel self-conscious since the teacher, Margaret, who also happens to be Mars's roommate's name, pushed us running so quickly. My arms felt like overcooked spaghetti at the end, and I was soaked in sweat, yet they were also oddly strong. After class, I checked my phone and saw 3 missed calls from unidentified numbers. Derek was left on unread after using his new burner phone strategy and receiving a text from Xavier asking if we might chat at some point. I'm not yet prepared for that discussion. I finally took on thing number 3 on Tuesday and submitted an application for the digital marketing credential. I'd been eyeing for a long time. Derek consistently claimed that because I already had a steady job, it was a waste of money. I completed the application in 43 minutes. Before I could overthink it, I had another 20 minutes to compose the brief personal statement and 3 seconds to press submit. Immediately after, I had a mini panic episode, wondering whether I was making a big mistake. I called my mother, who, in her typical manner, calmed me down. Half support. Half. I support you even if I don't understand why you're making your life more difficult. Things were heated on Wednesday. My phone started exploding with an Amara SMS when I was at the grocery store. Give me a call immediately. Derek is live on Instagram. He's referring to you. It's not good. In the midst of the cereal aisle, I left my cart behind. I apologize for the underpaid grocery store employees that rushed to my car to see the train accident. Derek was there, obviously intoxicated. 2:00 p.m. Red-faced and slurring, he spoke straight to the camera on a Wednesday about how he had lost the love of his life and was unsure of how to move on. Comments were coming in quickly. Most people advise him to switch off the live stream or seek assistance. But he simply continued, ignoring some remarks while reading others out loud. Then my blood froze as he uttered anything. She's watching this, I know it. I'll be over tonight, Eliana. We must discuss this. No is no longer an acceptable response to me. In complete fear, I contacted Amara right away. Despite her offer to remain with me, I ultimately decided to call my brother Miguel. In all honesty, if Derek did show up, he would be more threatening and closer to my flat. Miguel showed up around 5:30 p.m. LONG with adequate nighttime supplies for a week, and his girlfriend Tanya advised me to avoid arguing. They were going to remain till this guy understood. He settled down on my couch, hooked up his Nintendo Switch to my TV, and then pretended that everything was perfectly normal. By 8 p.m., I was on the verge of believing Derek's warning was nothing more than drunken rhetoric. I was beginning to unwind by 9 o'clock, when the doorbell rang at 9:47 p.m. Tanya and I stood back and Miguel responded. Derek's voice, which was passionate and slurred, was asking to see me. Miguel's answers were quiet and subdued. The tone was obvious, but I couldn't make out the words. 5 minutes or so later, I heard my door close. Miguel returned with a calm but irritated expression, saying that Derek had eventually departed after Miguel persuaded him that now wasn't the right moment. According to the year's understatement, Derek had a gruff appearance and a scent reminiscent of having taken a bath in Jack Daniels. That night, I had a terrible night's sleep and jumped at every noise outside my window. I kept reflecting on how things had changed in the 5 weeks prior, when I still felt I knew Derek and still thought he was the one. I woke up Thursday morning to a text message from an unfamiliar number. Mom, this is Derek. I'm not sure what to do and I'm scared about him. He refuses to eat, hardly ever sleeps. He lost his job yesterday because he arrived intoxicated. Call me, even though I know you owe him nothing. Discuss manipulating emotions. This was what she always did. Treated Derek as like he was incapable of handling the repercussions, rushing to make things right. One of the numerous warning signs I had disregarded. Miguel suggested ignoring the text when I showed it to him, but I couldn't get it off my mind all day. Not precisely guilt, but a persistent sense that things were getting out of control. I made the decision to text her back at about 3 o'clock. I'm sad Derek is having difficulties, but I have no control over his decisions or recovery. Please urge him to seek expert assistance. She answered right away. He was wrong. Everyone is worthy of forgiveness. I didn't respond. Certain blunders permanently alter your perception of a person. Something unexpected happened that night. I had been browsing TikTok. I know, a glutton for torture, when a video from someone I didn't follow caught my attention. My heart stopped when I read the caption on one of those storytime TikToks. Derek's longtime pal Franklin was the one you called out for being poisonous after he humiliated his girlfriend on TikTok. The man laughing along who was really in the original video. Franklin described in the film how he had participated in Derek's poisonous conduct for many years. Not just with me, but also with past girlfriends. How Derek's worst tendencies were frequently encouraged by his friend group. How he was personally awakened by the TikTok scandal. Eliana, if you see this, he said, I apologize. Derek and you were let down by all of us, dude. Seek assistance. This has nothing to do with getting her back. Becoming someone who would never harm her in the first place is the goal here. I viewed it 7 times. I sent it to Amara, who spent a solid 10 minutes responding with nothing but holy crap. Franklin DM'd me on Instagram after that. I hope the video didn't exacerbate the situation. Simply couldn't keep quiet any longer. No need to answer. For a long, I sat with it. I was glad he didn't anticipate a reply. I wrote back at last. I appreciate you speaking up. It's better late than never. In the end, our chat was shockingly candid. He informed me that Derek had been going through a rough patch since I left, drinking every day, fighting, and alienating people. He claimed that the group of friends was split between those who were supporting him and those who were attempting to assist him. Franklin also validated a suspicion of mine. That was not the first time Derek has said such things about me. That struck differently. The first time it was recorded. I was aware that it wasn't a single inebriated error, but rather a trend that accurately reflected his perception of me when I wasn't there. Friday. I went away precisely 1 month ago yesterday. I made the decision to do the last task on my list in honor of Independence Day, getting a dating app downloaded. I wanted to remind myself that Derek isn't the only person in the world, and that there are plenty of other people who may like me without covertly putting me down. Not because I'm ready to date God, no. It felt strangely exposed to set up my profile, pick pictures of myself that I loved, and write a bio that was true to who I am rather than tailored to the tastes of one person, like extending muscles I didn't realize I possessed. My phone rang immediately after I had completed creating my profile. One more unidentified number. Something forced me to respond, even though I was on the verge of instantly rejecting it, thinking it was Derek with another burner phone. Derek wasn't the one. Xavier, his friend, was there. Xavier spoke very quickly and sounded strange, said he had crucial information to share with me. A reference to the first TikTok, something that might alter my perspective on things. I nearly ended the call, telling him that I was done with Derek, his pals, and their drama. The TikTok, however, wasn't spontaneous, according to Xavier. I can establish that Ileana Derek planned it. Xavier and I are meeting today at 2:00 p.m. in the Starbucks. Just in case, Miguel insisted on accompanying me and sitting at a close table. What Xavier wants to tell me is unknown to me. After I see Xavier, I'll provide an update. I've already changed my clothes 4 times and my stomach is in knots. I suppose you wish me luck. Edit is on her way to Starbucks. I appreciate all of your encouraging remarks. To respond to the most frequently asked questions, I don't intend to unblock Eric, and I haven't done so yet. Sure, I'll have my pepper spray with me. I appreciate your care, lol. And no, I'm not interested in Derek returning. I simply want to know what occurred with the previous update, everyone. Since I still find it hard to believe what has transpired initially, I have already rewrote this message 4 times. I appreciate all of the encouraging remarks I received following my previous cliffhanger update. I apologize for keeping you waiting, but I honestly needed some time to take in what Xavier had shown me. Let's go back to 2:03 p.m. on Saturday. I entered Starbucks feeling nauseous and failed to notice Xavier in the corner booth, frantically tearing up a napkin. Miguel positioned himself at a table close to the door, looking conspicuous even though he was wearing indoor sunglasses for disguise. Xavier appeared rugged. Not as bad as Derek, but certainly stressed. He had dark bags under his eyes, his hair was unkempt, and he was wearing the same shirt that I had just seen him wearing on Instagram at least 3 times. The first 5 minutes were excruciatingly uncomfortable. He expressed regret for his involvement in the TikTok incident in around 17 different ways. I waited for him to finish speaking while sipping my coffee. At last, he took out his phone. Before I show you this, you must realize that it wasn't until yesterday that I discovered it. I came upon this conversation that Derek began around a month ago when searching through some old group chats for a pizza business we had previously purchased from. He slipped his phone over the table, you know. It opens to the Weekend Warriors group WhatsApp chat. Along with Franklin, Xavier, Derek, and 2 more men, I roll. 5 weeks prior to the TikTok incident, the texts were sent. Guys, Derek, I need your assistance with something. Franklin, how are you, Derek? Trying to decide how to end things with Xavier. Whoa. Really? I assumed you 2 were exploring locations together. Derek. Yes, that is the issue. She is becoming overly serious. In addition, I made a new friend at the gym. As I browsed, my face began to heat up. Derek continued by explaining that he had been speaking the truth. Adriana for about 3 months. But he was concerned about my reaction to a split because we had a lot of friends together and she may be upset. I apologized for continuing to read. Things worsened. In order to appear like the decent person, Derek was actually asking his buddies for tips on how to get me to leave our relationship. Their recommendations varied from instigating fights over nothing to progressively become more aloof. And I almost dropped the phone because of this. To get her to notice it and dump you, simply act like a jerk on social media. Derek's post was the final one in the thread. TikTok may be the next big thing. In any case, she never checks it. Xavier was unable to look me in the eyes when I gazed up at him. Why now show me this? I inquired. He clarified that he had been feeling more and more bad about his involvement in everything since our previous talk, and that he had thought the TikTok was simply intoxicated. Not a deliberate move, just stupidity. Was unaware of Adriana until he came upon these texts. Derek has been deceiving everyone. Xavier told us that he made the worst decision of his life and that he is devastated. He continues to text Adriana in the interim. Yesterday, I spotted them together at Chipotle. The last puzzle piece seemed to fit together perfectly. The TikTok wasn't an inebriated error. It was intentional. It was just a plan that didn't work out when I didn't show up to face him. For a while, I sat there trying to comprehend that Derek had not only purposefully made fun of me online, but that he had done it in order to get out of our relationship and start seeing someone else. To keep his facade intact, he was now pretending to be a distraught lover. After thanking Xavier for revealing the truth to me, I left Starbucks with Miguel following, asking 70 questions I wasn't prepared to respond to. That evening, I decided something. Following a 37-day period of stillness, Derek and I were not going to reconcile. I was going to speak with him on my terms. That ship had set sail, collided with an iceberg, and sank to the ocean below. But to inform him that I was fully aware of everything. At precisely 10 a.m. on Sunday, I texted Derek using my own number. Today, we must speak. 2 p.m. JAVA. Proceed to the main. Avoid being late. It took him 12 seconds to answer. I'll be present. Thank you. I adore you, Eliana. He doesn't really love me. Spoiler warning. For the next 3 hours, I vacillated between total terror and total certainty. Wore 4 different outfits. Like I was getting ready for a job interview, I rehearsed my speech in front of the mirror. To talk me out of it, give Tamara 2 calls. In order to reserve the corner table with my back to the wall, I arrived at Java Hut 20 minutes early. Strategic placement. I placed a chai latte order. I had no real intention of drinking. At 1:58 p.m., Derek entered the cafe and looked around until he saw me. I was surprised at how well he looked. For a moment, he wore the blue button-down I had given him, showered, and shaved. My heart made that recognizable flip. Every time I saw him, it did. Then I recalled the texts on WhatsApp. I pointed to the chair across from him to escape his attempt at an embrace. He sat down, but his face sank. Started talking about how sorry he was, how much he missed me, and how the last month had been the hardest of his life in what seemed like a prepared speech. I gave him just 2 minutes to speak. I then held up my phone screen between us, showing the group chat screenshots that Xavier had emailed me. Who was Adriana then? I inquired about his facial expression. You all. It was similar to witnessing a taser being used on someone, like a fish struggling to breathe, his mouth expanded and closed. That is, Xavier shouldn't have had those. Derek, just be honest with me. For once. The following 20 minutes were enlightening. He stopped apologizing and began making excuses after realizing he had been caught. At first, Adriana was simply a buddy. Yes, Jan. For months, he had been perplexed by our relationship. He believed that being with one person in your 20s for 3 years was too lengthy. Even though the TikTok was dumb, he never imagined that I would see it. He confessed, I freaked out when you vanished. I knew I had made a grave error. You weren't worth losing for Adriana. Then something clicked. He wasn't heartbroken over my injury. His appearance as the villain, his loss of narrative control, and the fact that everyone knew what he had done upset him. I sipped my iced chai and said the words. I had spent the entire morning practicing. Derek, I'm not here to reconcile. I'm come to inform you that I'm finished and that I know everything. Please don't get in touch with my family, friends, or myself ever again. We're done. I'm now 99% certain that the tears that filled his eyes were staged. But you are loved by me. Oh, he said. This is something we can resolve. I'll do anything. You wouldn't have spent 3 months figuring out how to make me seem bad so you could be with someone else if you truly loved me. I picked up my purse and jacket and got to my feet. He played his last card at that point. Not when I expected it, he shouted out. I broke the lease on my apartment. I assumed that I had been residing with my mother. For a brief, crazy moment, I believed that we would be moving in together next month as planned. I felt bad, as if I were the one destroying his life. Then I recalled the calculating coldness of those communications, precisely figuring out how to shatter my heart in the most conspicuous way. Adriana should be called, I said. She has space in her house, I'm sure. After that, I left. No scene, no dramatic departure, just finished. Over the following 2 hours, he sent 17 texts, alternating between apologies, anger, and desperation. None of them received a response from me. I just sent Amara screenshots that I took, captioning them, "The audacity continues." At around midday, a text message from an unidentified number appeared on my phone. My initial reaction was, "Here we go again." It wasn't Derek, though. Adriana was the one. "Hello, Eliana. Even if you don't know me, I believe we should speak. It seems that Derek has been giving you one narrative while telling me another." That afternoon, we got together for coffee. This week, I've had enough coffee to power a small city. It turns out that Adriana was unaware of Derek's relationship until 2 weeks ago, when he publicly apologized. TikTok. He informed her that he had been unattached for months and was coping with an insane ex-partner who was unable to move on. Does that sound familiar? The most bizarre aspect? She's very pleasant. In the end, we spent 3 hours discussing Derek lies and exchanging notes. She showed me the texts in which he expressed his love for her. He began sending me heartfelt voicemails on my phone the same day. We were following each other on Instagram by the conclusion of our talk, and we had preliminary arrangements to visit a new wine bar that opens next month. Trust problems. I suppose it's solidarity. I eventually did what I had been putting off that evening. I visited Derek's Instagram page after momentarily unblocking him. JoJo's Melancholy Boy anthem, Glimpse of Us, was playing on a dark screen in his tail from 3 hours prior. So on the wording and brand, it's not always clear what you have until it's gone. We were still in his profile photo from the previous summer. "I'd give everything to go back" is the title for his most recent post, which included a vintage picture of us from our second anniversary. Adriana, meantime, texted her that same day to ask if she wanted to hang together later, and she showed me screenshots of the exchange. Never in my life have I felt more confident about a choice. It was precisely 40 days ago yesterday that I first learned about the TikTok. 6 weeks of suffering, rage, bewilderment, and at last, insight. Derek was formally blacklisted on all platforms. My phone number was changed this morning. I informed my landlord. He should not be permitted to enter the building at all. After that, I took care of myself. Do you recall my application for a certificate in digital marketing? Yesterday, I was accepted. Next month, classes begin. I used funds I had been accumulating for the apartment Derek and I were to share to cover the deposit. Amara, Miguel, and a few other friends threw an unplanned goodbye Derek party last night. We took turns reading the increasingly frantic emails he'd written over the last several weeks, ordered pizza, and drank cheap wine. I know it's toxic, yet strangely therapeutic. Miguel once asked me whether I felt bad about squandering 3 years with Derek. The problem is that I'm not. Those were not wasted years. They taught me about warning signs that I will never overlook again, about my own fortitude, and about the type of relationship I truly deserve. I was notified this morning that I had been tagged in a new Instagram photo by Derek. It took me around 3 seconds to understand that I didn't care what the view button said. His remarks no longer have any influence on me. Instead, I sat on my balcony, watched the sunrise, prepared my coffee, and erased the notice. So I suppose that this is the formal conclusion of the story, everyone. Edit. I've been asked whether I'm concerned that Derek will read this post. To be honest, I kind of hope he does. Let him see how completely he was unable to keep this story under control. Show him that his repulsive ex is doing well without him. You deserve more, and there is better out there for any other females who are struggling with their own Derek. Believe me,